Hello, and welcome back to Mammalian Anatomy and Physiology. In this video, we're continuing our lecture series on chapter 19 and 20, where we're looking at the anatomy of the heart and blood vessels. In this video, we're going to focus on cardiac muscle histology. So we're going to look at the tissues. So we've already looked at cardiac muscle tissue before when we talked about our tissue chapter, our histology chapter, but let's review a little bit of what we saw and go into a bit more detail so we can set up the foundations for cardiac physiology. So over here we can see a diagram, or we can see an image of cardiac muscle tissue as though it would be under a light microscope. We can see some of the features that we saw in the past, in that it's going to have short cells, and these short cells are going to be branched. This is going to be different than skeletal muscle tissues, which generally have long, unbranched cells. Like skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle is going to have striations, and those striations are the result of sarcomeres being present. Many of the structures of the cardiac muscle is going to look similar to the skeletal muscle, but it won't be exact. I'm not going to go into the specific details. I'll save that for next year when we're in vertebrate phys. But for now, know that there are similarities but significant differences between cardiac muscle tissue and cardiac muscle tissue. If you want to go more into detail, check out your textbook in the histology chapter, got tongue-tied, to study more. But it does have these striations, so it's going to be a light stripe and a dark stripe that we're seeing going across the surface of the cell, and this is due to the presence of sarcomeres. The actin and myosin are going to overlap in such a way that it'll create a shadow and a light spot as we look at it under the light microscope. Oops. Over here we're going to have a nuclei. Each cell is going to have about 1 or 2 nuclei in it, rather than the hundreds of nuclei that are found in skeletal muscle cells. But the most important structures that I would like to focus on here are the intercalated discs. Intercalated discs are going to be special regions in which the 2 cardiac muscle cells actually attach to each other using proteins that will form gap junctions and desmosomes. So let's talk about it together. So what's going to happen here is we're going to have intercalated discs connecting 2 cardiac muscle cells. And these intercalated discs are going to be regions in which the plasma membrane of these 2 cells will actually fold together on top of each other. This folding is essential because it increases the surface area of communication and attachment points for these 2 cardiac muscle cells. So the cells will actually fold over each other. Within the intercalated discs, we're going to have 2 important junctions, gap junctions and desmosomes. Gap junctions are going to be proteins that are going to create tubes that will connect the cytoplasm of the 2 cells. This is going to be essential for allowing for communication and is going to be the foundation for cardiovascular physiology. This is because the heart can actually generate its own action potential. It can generate its own electrical impulse. And that electrical impulse will travel through the gap junctions from cell to cell, and it will stimulate the cells to contract. These gap junctions are going to be important because they are going to act as an electrical synapse between the two cardiac muscle cells. We learned about electrical synapses before when we talked about the nervous system. What we see here as a perfect example of an electrical synapse, the action potential will move directly from cell to cell. It doesn't need the help of a neurotransmitter. And the signal will always be excitatory. It'll tell the next cell to have an action potential. So make a note of this. This will be important later on when we talk about the conduction system of the cell or of the heart. The second type of junction is going to be a desmosome. The desmosomes are going to anchor the two cells together, and it specifically anchors between the myofibrils. Remember, within the myofibrils, we have the sarcomeres, and you can see here the shape of the sarcomere with the Z disc, the actin, and the myosin. Notice that the desmosomes will physically attach the sarcomeres or myofibrils between two cells. And so it will kind of unite the contractile units together. This will allow the heart to contract as a unit. And because all of the sarcomeres will form a circle or a figure-8 shape, it will create a squeezing motion or a twisting motion to allow for the heart to pump blood. So that is really cool. So because the heart is connected using gap junctions and desmosomes, the heart is actually a succinctum, meaning that it's going to be essentially many cells acting together as a single unit, almost as a single cell, working together to be electrically, chemically, and mechanically connected to each other. And this will allow the heart to act in coordination. So it will coordinate what regions of the heartbeat at a particular time and all those sorts of really cool things. So we'll get more into it in the future. This image tries to illustrate that a little bit better. Over here, what we can see is a light microscope. You can see the striations that are the result of the sarcomeres, and then we have darker bands over here that have been dyed. Those are the intercalated discs. The intercalated discs would be areas of the plasma membrane that have been folded together and overlapped, and in those folds we're going to have gap junctions over here that are going to allow for the electrical impulse to travel from cell to cell, coordinating the heart's electrical activity and coordinating its contractions. And also it's going to be connected by desmosomes, which are going to anchor the sarcomeres together, so they'll be tightly stitched together as a single unit. So that covers our section on cardiac muscle histology, cardiac muscle tissue. In the next videos, we're going to look at the blood flow through the heart, and we're also going to look at the conduction system. This information will pertain mostly to the conduction system and how the electrical or action potential will travel through the heart. All right. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.